Now a statement by Minister Sri S Jaishankar ji.
Mr. Chairman, sir, I rise to make a statement to this August House on the government's efforts to promote our foreign policy since the last session of the Parliament. In doing so, I focus on high-level visits that have taken place recently. In order that their full significance is properly appreciated, allow me, Mr. Chairman, sir, to briefly share with the House the larger context in which they have been organized. This government has a comprehensive foreign policy outlook that reflects both the state of the world and India's growing role in it. We see a multipolar landscape that has been unfolding over the last decade, although its pace has been hastened in recent years. Our own growing capability and influence is, of course, one part of this change. This requires us to strengthen multilateralism, even while engaging in more intensive bilateral interactions. It also means looking beyond orthodox diplomacy and arriving at issue-based understandings with different combinations of nations. To shape the global agenda more effectively, India has to engage countries large and small across all regions. It is not only a matter of advancing our own national interest. The expectations that the world has of us is also very much higher. In our own region, this is visible in the neighborhood first approach as well as the Sagar doctrine. We have pursued the Act East policy vigorously while building an effective bridge to the Gulf in the West. Our Indo-Pacific outlook has steadily gained understanding. Our commitments to Africa and other nations of the South are well under implementation. Regional summits speak for the growing salience of India in the perception of the world. The cumulative impact of all this is therefore a combination of greater diplomatic activity, more intensive development partnerships, stronger security engagements, and growing global profile. Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas is the guiding principle of our foreign policy as well. That is visible, Mr. Chairman, in the high-level visits since the last session. Honorable Rashtrapati ji has paid state visits to Iceland, Switzerland, and Slovenia in September, and the Philippines and Japan in October. The Honorable Vice President has visited Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia in August, as also to Comoros and Sierra Leone in October. The Vice President also headed the delegation for the 18th Non-Aligned Summit that went to Azerbaijan in October. Prime Minister visited Bhutan and then France, United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain in August, Russia and the United States in September on a trip that included a visit to the United Nations, Saudi Arabia in October, and Thailand for the East Asia Summit, and Brazil for the BRICS Summit in November. Raksha Mantri represented India at the Heads of Government Summit at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in November. Their diplomatic initiatives have been supported by my own visits and that of the Minister of State to various other countries in Asia, Africa, Europe, and the Americas. Through these endeavors, we have sought to cover a variety of regions and a broad range of partners. They have helped to shape the global agenda, bringing India's interests and perspectives to the table. They have advanced our national interests by strengthening bilateral partnerships and create favorable plurilateral and multilateral outcomes. These range from big ideas on climate change to policy measures on counterterrorism and anti-corruption, as well as practical steps on trade, investment, and labor opportunities, besides ensuring the welfare of the diaspora. And together, they have helped raise the image of India in the world. Visits by Honorable Rashtrapati ji and Honorable Vice President have enabled us cement our bilateral partnerships. Rashtrapati ji's visit to Slovenia was the first ever presidential visit from India to that country. During his various visits, Rashtrapati ji had a chance to interact with the vibrant Indian community in those places, gave lectures at universities, unveiled the bust of Mahatma Gandhi in Switzerland in Villeneuve, a city which Mahatma Gandhi had visited in 1931, and signed important MOUs such as those on white shipping, tourism with Philippines, and on science and technology with Slovenia. Rashtrapati ji also addressed business forums in Iceland, Slovenia, Switzerland, and the Philippines. His visit to Japan for the enthronement of the emperor underscored the importance that we attach to this important partner. All 6 countries visited by the Honorable Vice President during this period marked the first high-level visit from India to those countries. Honorable Vice President's visit have enabled us to further our economic relations with the Baltic states and highlighted our cultural and linguistic ties with those countries. His visit to Comoros and Sierra Leone were widely appreciated, for they reiterated our commitment to friendship with African countries. The visits also resulted in tangible outcomes, including cooperation in the field of defense with Comoros and an MOU for $30 million line of credit with Sierra Leone. Honorable Vice President's visit to Azerbaijan for the NAM summit highlighted India's continuing commitment to the NAM. It has added significance as it came just before the 65th anniversary of the Bandung Principles in 2020 and the 60th anniversary of the establishment of NAM in 2021. During the visit, Honorable Vice President also had bilateral meetings with the presidents of Afghanistan, Cuba, Venezuela, and Iran, the Vice President of Vietnam, and the Prime Ministers of Bangladesh and Nepal. Since the last session of the House, Prime Minister paid a state visit to Bhutan from 17 to 18 August 2019. This visit, early in his second term, underscores the government's continuing commitment to our neighborhood first policy. India's unique and special friendship with Bhutan is evident from the fact that the Prime Minister of Bhutan, Dr. Lothe Tshering, received our Prime Minister at the airport and accompanied him throughout the visit. Prime Minister had warm interactions with His Majesty Jigme Khesar Namgyal Wangchuk, the King of Bhutan, as well as with His Majesty Jigme Singye Wangchuk, the fourth King. In his talks with the Prime Minister of Bhutan, the latter conveyed Bhutan's appreciation for India's continuing assistance to Bhutan's socio-economic development, including in the hydropower sector. The two Prime Ministers also jointly inaugurated the 720 megawatt Mangdechu hydropower project and the ground earth station for the South Asia satellite and launched the Rupee card. They agreed on the establishment of a super specialty hospital in Thimphu. The visit was also an opportunity for both countries to re-emphasize the common and indivisible nature of our security interest. The Prime Minister was invited by the President of France to participate in the G7 Summit Outreach Session held in Biarritz, France on 25-26 August. The invitation is an acknowledgement of the importance that G7 countries attach to India's leadership on matters related to climate, biodiversity and oceans, and on digital transformation. Prime Minister's call for a mass movement against single-use plastic was welcomed by other leaders. At the digital transformation session, where Prime Minister was invited to be the lead speaker, he highlighted the initiatives taken by his government for the empowerment and inclusive social development. We will continue to work with G7 countries on such issues and also on the reform of the multilateral system in order to make it more representative of current realities. Prime Minister held meetings on the sidelines with President Donald Trump of the United States, Prime Minister Boris Johnson of the UK, President Macky Sall of Senegal, and the UN Secretary General. He separately paid a bilateral visit to France and held wide-ranging talks with President Macron on ways to further deepen our strategic partnership with France, including inter alia, in the areas of defense and security, energy, including civil nuclear cooperation, space, counter-terrorism, trade, and investment. In pursuance of the government's determination to build even closer ties with the Gulf states, Prime Minister visited Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates between August 22-24 and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia on 29 October 2019. Prime Minister's visit to Bahrain is the first ever by any Prime Minister and was welcomed by the King and other leaders as a signal of our commitment to strengthen all-round relations. With the leaderships of Saudi Arabia and the UAE, with whom we have witnessed a qualitative transformation of our ties since 2014, Prime Minister's visit afforded another occasion to advance our shared interests in the areas of energy, trade, investment, and security, as well as to take up matters of interest to our large diasporas in this region. Rupee card was launched in Bahrain and UAE. The King of Bahrain and the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi conferred their nation's highest awards on Prime Minister as a gesture of close friendship and affinity. We have also established a strategic partnership council with Saudi Arabia that will oversee trade and investment, energy, as well as security-related cooperation, which is expected to further strengthen our strategic relations. Prime Minister delivered a keynote address to the Future Investment Initiative Forum on India's economic prospects and investment opportunities. Prime Minister's visit to Russia from 4-5 September for both the annual summit with President Putin and to participate as a guest of honor at the 5th Eastern Economic Forum in Vladivostok was also a new milestone in our bilateral relations. Prior to Prime Minister's visit, a high-level delegation led by Commerce and Industry Minister, accompanied by Chief Ministers of 4 states and over 100 business persons, had visited Vladivostok to scope out possibilities for cooperation in the Russian Far East in sectors like energy, mining, and agriculture. The energy agenda that envisaged a 5-year program of cooperation was also prepared in advance by a visit of the Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas. To support Indian companies to do business in the Russian Far East, Prime Minister has announced a special line of credit of $1 billion, especially for this part of Russia. The annual summit with President Putin was utilized to review and progress our multifarious activities and cooperation in defense and security, space, the Gaganyaan program, civil nuclear cooperation, trade and investment, and people-to-people contacts. President Putin highly appreciated Prime Minister's participation in the EEF in Vladivostok as a mark of India's firm commitment to the special and privileged strategic partnership with the Russian Federation. Prime Minister's presence at the high-level segment of the 74th session of the United Nations General Assembly in New York from 22 to 27 September underscored our government's firm commitment to multilateralism during a period of global uncertainty. Prime Minister called for making the UN more effective and purposeful through fundamental reform. Prime Minister participated in 3 important events: the Climate Action Summit, at which he announced the launch of our new initiative, the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, and also reiterated our decision to end the use of single-use plastic. The high-level meeting on universal health coverage, where he highlighted the Ayushman Bharat initiative taken by the government, and joined in the commitment of all governments to a vision of universal health coverage by 2030, and the leaders' dialogue on strategic responses to terrorism and violent extremist narratives, where he spoke on the urgent collective need for all nations to join hands in combating the scourge of terrorism. Prime Minister's participation was welcomed by the general membership of the UN as a clear iteration of India's support to the UNO as it enters its 75th year. In his address to the general debate of the UNGA, Prime Minister focused on the development agenda. He highlighted India's initiatives such as Swachh Bharat, Jan Dhan Yojana, etc., as an inspiration to the world. Prime Minister said that India's development provides hope to the world and offered to share our experience and expertise to other developing countries in addressing their development challenges. He emphasized Mahatma Gandhi's message of truth and non-violence for peace and development and prosperity, and Swami Vivekananda's message of harmony and peace on a model for multilateralism. A highlight of Prime Minister's engagements in New York included, for the very first time, a leaders' meeting with the Pacific Small Islands, developing states, and a leaders' meeting with the Caribbean community, CARICOM. This outreach was greatly appreciated by all the leaders of these 2 regions. Prime Minister's offer of financial assistance for high-impact community development projects and concessional lines of credit was welcomed. Prime Minister also had bilateral meetings with 16 other heads of government and state, including the US President, Iran's President Rouhani, President Soli of the Maldives, Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, and the incoming President of the European Council, Mr. Charles Michel of Belgium, on the sidelines of the UNGA. To mark the 150th anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi's, Prime Minister presided over a special commemorative event on 21 September in the presence of UN Secretary General, the Prime Ministers of Bangladesh, Jamaica, Singapore, and the President of South Korea. A commemorative stamp was issued by the UN to mark the 150th anniversary. Prime Minister also dedicated the solar panels installed on the roof of the UN building with an Indian grant of $1 million in memory of Gandhiji. Prime Minister visited Thailand on November 2 to 4 to participate in the annual India, ASEAN, and India East Asia summits and related meetings. He emphasized the centrality of ASEAN in our Act East policy and our initiatives to enhance this partnership, including our offer of PhD fellowship programs of up to 1,000 Asian students at our IITs. This is the largest single capacity building project by India for ASEAN. The ASEAN leaders were deeply appreciative of our vision of the Indo-Pacific. At the East Asia Summit, we proposed an Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative as an open, free, and inclusive platform for cooperation. At the third Rcep summit, Prime Minister conveyed that India had participated in the Rcep negotiations with sincerity and in a spirit of cooperation, but was unable to associate itself with the Rcep agreement, since the agreement in its present form does not satisfactorily address all our outstanding issues and concerns. The government remains firmly committed to upholding our interests in all such negotiations. Prime Minister has just returned from the 11th BRICS Summit in Brasilia from 13-14 November, where he also had bilateral meetings with the presidents of Brazil, China, and Russia. The summit focused inter alia on national sovereignty, intra-BRICS cooperation for economic development, terrorism, multilateralism, digital transformation, and science, technology, and innovation. There are important deliverables in many of these areas. 5 sub-working groups on terrorism have been set up to focus on practical cooperation. Prime Minister made announcements of several BRICS initiatives which India proposes to pursue in the coming years, including the hosting of the BRICS Digital Health Summit in keeping with our Fit India movement, the hosting of the first BRICS Water Ministers meeting, a BRICS Film Technology Symposium, as well as a BRICS Youth Summit. During the visit, Prime Minister had a productive meeting with President Bolsonaro of Brazil. Prime Minister has invited the President of Brazil to India as the chief guest for Republic Day, and he has accepted the invitation. As is customary, our leaders met with Indian communities in many of the nations that they have visited. Rashtrapati Ji had such interactions in all the 5 countries he visited, and Vice President during his visits to Europe and Africa. Prime Minister addressed the Indian diaspora in Bahrain, Houston, and Bangkok respectively. The Houston event was notable for the presence and participation of President Donald Trump. In the past 3 months, Prime Minister also received several world leaders in India, reflecting the excellent state of our bilateral relations with Bangladesh. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina paid an official visit on October 5. Several important agreements were concluded during this visit, including on the use of Chattogram and Mongla ports. This will greatly enhance connectivity to our northeast. An agreement for the supply of drinking water in Sabrum town in Tripura from the waters of the Feni River was another notable outcome. Prime Minister and President Xi Jinping continued their in-depth discussion on overarching long-term and strategic issues of global and regional importance at the second informal summit in Chennai on 11-12 October. The 5th biennial intergovernmental consultations were held with Chancellor Merkel of Germany on 1 November, at which the 2 sides agreed to step up cooperation in new and advanced technology, artificial intelligence, skills development, railways modernization, and cybersecurity. In sum, Mr. Chairman, in the first 6 months of this government's tenure, we have re-emphasized our neighborhood first policy, reinforced our relationship with all the major countries at the highest levels, worked to expand our relations with the Gulf, Southeast Asia, and African regions, launched a new international initiative known as the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, and also expressed a strong interest in fulfilling our commitments to the Sustainable Development Goals and in reforming the multilateral system so as to make it responsive to the current requirements. In pursuing these objectives, our government has always maintained its independence in the conduct of our foreign policy and ensured that the national interest determines our objectives and goals. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable members, kindly be precise in your clarifications. In the last, Honorable Minister will reply. Send you notes. Sri Vaiko. Please send your name
I'm
here.
happy our Honorable Prime Minister got the privilege of meeting the top-level leaders, and very useful and purposeful discussions took place with Mr. Putin, with Mr. Donald Trump and Xi Jinping and other leaders. Practice was here when I was a member of parliament here. After every visit, the Prime Minister used to make a statement here about his visit and his experience and what he got the inputs from there. And the members used to seek clarifications from the Prime Minister himself. Why after all these visits, almost important leaders of the entire world, our Prime Minister has gone and met them. So it is the prerogative of every member here to know from the Prime Minister himself about the experience. I have got respect for the External Affairs Minister. He has got the capability, he has got all the qualities, everything I know.
Thank
But
you,
why-
Vaikoji. Thank you.
Sir, no, sir, why the practice was given up?
Yes, you have put your clarification.
Now, because here, the government's...
Please be precise.
Please, sir, to make statement on the government efforts to promote foreign policy focusing on high-level visits that have taken place recently. Mr. External Affairs Minister also is a high-level minister. He has
Please.
gone to Colombo,
Please.
sir. He has gone to Colombo to give you a bouquet.
This is not
to
the
a
occasion of
person.
speech,
No,
please.
to give you a bouquet to a person.
I'll move to other person now.
Person, yes.
Yes,
Who
I'll
is
move to other
responsible
for
the
clarification.
Tamils,
Please.
to give you a bouquet. And
Please.
what has happened, sir? This is democracy.
This is not the occasion of
Don't
making
try
a
to
speech, sir.
strangulate my voice.
Please.
Don't try
Please.
to strangulate, sir.
I'll call other people also.
Sir, you
There are
may call.
There are a number
You may
of
call.
persons
Yeah,
to be.
Sir, the practice in here.
You have
24
already put
years,
your
I
clarification.
have seen, not like this. Not like this. Sir, my question. Now the two Tamil newspapers have been closed by the intimidation of the President of the Sri Lanka, Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa. He has stated, I am elected only by the Sinhalese. And our mothers and sisters were raped and lakhs of people were killed. He is
Thank
the
you.
root cause for the genocide
you.
of Tamils.
Thank you.
And you have
Sri-
gone there
Sri
to
P.
invade him
Bhattacharya.
without any
Sri
shame.
P. Bhattacharya, it must
Sir,
be very pointed
sir,
questions.
the
I will not
flames
allow
of-
to...
Please listen.
No,
Please
no,
listen. No.
no speech. It will
No.
not go on the record now. Please.
Please listen.
It will not go on the record now. Please. I
Sir,
cannot give time for speeches
How can
here.
I say? Let him
Please,
finish
it will not go on record. You please
Sir,
speak.
sir,
Please put your
sir, the honorable, sir, just honorable foreign minister has distributed this matter to us. This statement, matter, I say it's a matter. Sir, it is as like as a press note. We read everything, every inch of life in a different newspaper, in different times. When the Vice President visited, Prime Minister visited. But we'd like to know very simple question. After the visiting of all these dignitaries, what was the profit of Indian government? That we would like to know from him.
Thank you.
Number one, another simple
No,
thing.
just simple one pointed question.
In Tista River, Tista agreement,
I have got
are you
a number
going
of
to
persons
settle
who-
this Tista agreement is very soon or not?
I'll be
That I
forced
would
to.
like
I'll
to
be
know.
forced to. It's not debate. Sri Jairam Ramesh.
Sir, I congratulate the External Affairs Minister for a very comprehensive and competent summary of all press releases issued after the President, Vice President, and Prime Minister's visits. My question is on Para 9, Para 11, and Para 16. On Para 9, I would like to know from the Honorable External Affairs Minister that negotiations have been going on with the French government now for 10 years in civil nuclear cooperation. I would like to know from him what is the current status of negotiations with France. In Para 11, sir, 2 minutes. On Para 11, again, I would like to know from the Honorable External Affairs Minister, Kudankulam, 2 into 1,000 megawatts is already installed. Negotiations have started for 4 more reactors. I want to know what is the state of negotiations on expansion of Kudankulam beyond 2,000 megawatts. Para 16, sir, till the RCEP summit took place, spokesmen for the government were saying that joining RCEP was essential for India's economic interests. At Bangkok, we welcomed the Prime Minister discovering the talisman of Gandhiji and withdrawing for the time being from the RCEP agreement. I want to know from the Honorable External Affairs Minister, what is the roadmap for the next few months on India in the RCEP agreement, and whether any commitment has been made to review the Indo-Asean Free Trade Agreement.
Thank you. Kindly be pointed in your questions. Dr. Sasmit Patra.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I firstly like to thank the External Affairs Minister for the kind of work that has happened over the last 3 months. And just to add to it, sir, before I come to my question, I had the privilege of being on the Inter-Parliamentary Union delegation to Serbia, and that actually opened my eyes to the challenges that actually lie in international diplomacy, which I was not aware of. Having understood that and being a rapporteur in the climate agreement, sir, that we actually went through at the IPU in Belgrade, my specific question would be regarding COP25 in Chile. Considering that there are specific paras at which it has been really mentioned that the Honorable Prime Minister and the Honorable Vice President have been to various summits which has relevance to climate and climate change, and considering that we are engaging in discussions with like-minded countries moving towards COP25, which seems to be one of the major areas of concern. So therefore, how are we really preparing for it? Are we ready with our roadmap for COP25 Chile? Because a lot of issues between developing and developed countries are going to come up with terms of disaster mitigation and disaster management.
Sri Rakesh Sinha.
Vice Chairman, sir, we all know in international politics, leadership plays very vital role. And it is not unobvious that Modi doctrine has been making impact in international politics. And I congratulate External Affairs Minister for very focused presentation of our international relationship. I have two queries to him. The Modi doctrine has two important elements. One, after becoming the Prime Minister, he has emphasized on relationship with the Buddhist countries. And that is a very significant for India's economic and political relationship. So what progress we have made in that regard? Second, this doctrine, Modi doctrine, has emphasized on non-political issues like poverty alleviation, health issues, terrorism. And in this regard, we are getting support. So my small query is that, are we going to reorient NAM in a new international situation? That is a major challenge for India, to reorient and give a new life to NAM so that we can play a significant role in multipolar world.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Santanu Sen.
Sir, thank you very much. I am really delighted to see that our respected Prime Minister was so busy visiting so many countries, finding very little time to stay back in his own country. Sir, with all humility, I would like to know that we all have seen in USA, he was holding the hand of Mr. Donald Trump, and he was campaigning before lakhs of people that ugly bar Trump Sarkar. Sir, my question is, if there the Modi magic doesn't click, as it didn't click in our West Bengal in the recently held 3 bipole elections, then don't you think that this is going to hamper our Indo-American relationship? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Sri T.K. Rangarajan.
Thank you, Deputy Chairman. I also joined that Prime Minister normally gave us report what happened in this his tour. Right from Pandit Nehru, I have seen in paper, Nehru used to address in both houses. Why he ignored this August House, Prime Minister? I thank the Foreign Minister, he has given a detailed note. My point is, what is the sum total? How much trade we get? How much investment we get? That we need to know that one. Second, are you going to continue the RCEP negotiation with Asian countries?
Thank you.
And other
Thank you,
countries?
T.K. Rangarajan ji.
Number
Thank you.
3, wait, sir.
No, it's
Number
already
3,
two queries.
Add 4 more reactor in Kudangalam. Tamil Nadu people are afraid.
I will call now
It will
Sri
affect them.
Swapan Das Gupta.
So you have to
Sri Swapan Das Gupta.
the safety of the reactors.
People that we should have had a larger debate on foreign policy. So, Mr.
It will not go on the record,
speak?
please.
Sir,
It will not go on the record.
Mr.
Sri Swapan Das Gupta. Sri Swapan Das Gupta, please.
so I thank.
This is not going on the record.
So I agree. I concur with the other members, which says that a larger discussion on foreign policy should have been taking place. But, however, since the minister has generously given a statement paper, I would just like to quote one particular section from him, which says that one of the objectives of our foreign policy, to shape the global agenda effectively, India has to engage countries large and small across all regions. It is not only a matter of advancing our own national interest. Sir, in this context, it is known that for the past 6 or 7 years, we have not entered into a single FTA in this country. And again, this time we turned our back at the last minute for whatever reasons, or the Rcep agreement. Does this suggest that our present economic approach is in harmony with our foreign policy?
Thank you. Thank you. Sri Vinay Vishwam.
I am grateful to the Minister of External Affairs, a seasoned diplomat he is, for the pains that he has taken to brief us about the visits. On 3 paras, I have certain queries, sir. My first query is on the para number 4. It mentioned about big ideas on climate change. I would like to know a bit more about that, what this big idea on climate change is. Then on para 16, Rcep, many friends raised the issue here. As an Indian, I feel proud. At the last moment, our Prime Minister remembered Mahatma Gandhi and his talisman and appealed his conscience. Finish, sir. 3 questions only. No speech. It's my right, sir. Only
Please
my questions.
put your pointed question only.
Only questions. I asked only questions.
Just
my
put
question
your
is that, but there are apprehensions that in the Vietnam next session, there may be compulsion from many countries, including from the Indian Commerce Ministry, to dilute that position. I want it to be clarified. My
Thank
third,
you.
Third question.
Thank you.
Third
No,
question.
one.
Third question.
There are a number of people. No,
Third
I will not
question.
allow.
No,
Sri
third question,
KJ
sir.
Alfonso.
No, sir.
Sri
Sir,
KJ, no,
sir,
I'm not
only
going to
question.
allow. Sri KJ Alfonso. It will not go on the record. You have already put one clarification. Only one clarification I will allow. Please. Please. One clarification you have already put, Mr. Vinay Vishwam. You have already put one clarification. Should I move?
Sir, I
have limited time.
I am an MP of the Parliament. So,
You
sir,
speak.
Sir, my
It will
third
go on the
question.
record now. You please. You only your talk, your query will
So
go on the record.
congratulations to the External Affairs Minister for a very comprehensive report on where India is traveling and what has been achieved. I think the achievements during the past 5 years has really put India on the center stage. I think it's a great achievement.
Just
So a simple question is,
yes, simple question.
So a simple question is, I know we have certain problems with acquisition of the SS-400 missile shield from Russia. How are we navigating it? Because I know the US has objection. How are we navigating it and what stage is it?
Thank you. Sri Ravi Prakash Verma.
आदरणीय मंत्री जी ने बहुत ही डिटेल स्टेटमेंट रखा है और जो आतंकवाद के खिलाफ सरकार ने ग्लोबल सपोर्ट हासिल किया है, बधाई के लायक है। और जो जिक्र आपने नहीं किया है, आपकी योगा डिप्लोमेसी भी बहुत काम कर रही है, मुझे पता लगा। लेकिन जो आप हिंदुस्तान का जो जियो पॉलिटिकल या जियो स्ट्रेटजिक सिचुएशन है, सबसे बड़ा जो कंज्यूमर बेस है हिंदुस्तान, आबादी सबसे ज़्यादा है, टेक्निकल सप्लाई मैन पावर यहाँ पर बहुत ज़्यादा है। हिंदुस्तान को साउथ ईस्ट एशिया का नेचुरल लीडर बनना चाहिए था। यू आर लुकिंग इस पॉलिसी चल रहा है आपका, तो क्या ब्लूप्रिंट है वो क्लियर आज तक नहीं हो पाया है, आप क्या वो बताएंगे? सर, नेपाल हमसे खुश नहीं है और जो हमारी नेबरिंग कंट्रीज हैं उसमें भी हमसे नाराजगी है। पाकिस्तान दिवालिया हो चुका था, उसको चाइना ने टेक ओवर कर लिया है, $100 बिलियन उसको दिया है। आज हालत यह है कि पाकिस्तान सीधे चाइना का इंटरेस्ट सेफगार्ड कर रहा है। इन हालात में हम अपने आप को अपने इमीडिएट सराउंडिंग्स में कैसे एक नेचुरल लीडर के तौर पर पुटअप कर पाएंगे, मेहरबानी करके बताइएगा।
Sri Amar Patnaik.
Yes, sir. So I congratulate Honorable External Affairs Minister for this statement. So this statement essentially emphasizes on the need for multiculturalism, multipolar world, and therefore a multilateral setup. But what has happened to our FTAs after 2014?
Just wait for a minute. 6 बज चुके हैं और मैं मानता हूं कि हाउस की कंसेंसस आम सहमति है कि माननीय मंत्री जी का जवाब होने और स्पेशल मेंशन तक हम बैठ रहे हैं।
So my question is, what has happened to the FTAs, the bilateral FTAs? Particularly, are there any complexities with regard to the FTAs with EU and the Asean? Just what is the roadmap ahead? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Sri Ripun Bora.
Thank you, sir. I also compliment the External Affairs Minister for this very comprehensive report. But I want one clarification from the Minister at para number 8. The Honorable Prime Minister has inaugurated in Bhutan a hydroelectric project, but that is at the cost of the people of Assam. The entire water, the Bhutan lives it, and it is flooded and flooded. These 17 districts of Assam have been totally drowned during this. So I want to know whether the government of India will take up this matter with Bhutan government to address this issue.
Thank you. Srimati Vijla Satyanath.
Chairman, sir.
Satyanand.
I also compliment our Foreign Minister for bringing a very comprehensive, complete package of all the bilateral visits as well as the state visits of our President, the Prime Minister, the Vice President especially, whom I also had a privilege of accompanying both of them. And I also make on record that our Prime Minister chose Chennai to be his best location to have the international meeting, the informal summit in Chennai between the Prime Minister of India and the President Xi Jinping of China. And my question to the External Affairs Minister is, what is the step forward? What is India doing that whether India will become a permanent member in the United Nations Security Council? How far we have gone, how much steps we have taken as a dynamic foreign minister has taken over. Maybe this will be accomplished in this year.
Thank you. Now, Honorable Minister will reply.
So, thank you. Sir, let me begin by, first of all, expressing my appreciation through you, sir, to all the honorable members for taking an interest in the development and progress of our foreign policy. I would like to start by saying that the statement today was an account of the high-level visits taken by Rashtrapati ji, Honorable Vice President, Prime Minister. So, it was a comprehensive review of all the visits which have taken place since the last session. And let me say, sir, that as the External Affairs Minister of India, I am completely competent to do so. And these are visits, many of which I have myself been. So I can assure you that I speak both for the government and for the Prime Minister on this, so please rest assured.
Please. Not allowed. You are speaking without permission of the chair. No.
Let me turn, sir, then to Mr. Vaiko's statement.
No.
Let me turn, sir,
Mr. Vaiko, please take your seat. It's not going on record.
No. Let me turn, sir, to Mr. Vaiko's observation about the Sri Lankan president. I had visited Sri Lanka a day after he was sworn in as president. We discussed briefly our bilateral relationship. The president of Sri Lanka is due in India for a visit. Many of our bilateral concerns will be. Of course.
Unnecessarily, you are. Please. Please, Vaiko ji, please.
The relevant point, sir, which I would make for the consideration of the House and for Mr. Vaiko is that the President of Sri Lanka assured us that he is today the President of all Sri Lankans. So I think we need to look at that assurance, and obviously whatever discussions will happen during his visit would demonstrate where that assurance holds. As regards the question, sir, about the what is the gain to the Indian government, and I think that is an issue which more than one member, you honourable member across the aisle had raised, but some other members had also in some direct or indirect manner referred to it. I think there were a lot of gains from these visits. The gains were, as I said, big issues. Somebody asked me, in climate change, what was the big issues? What were the big ideas? The big ideas, for example, were the International Solar Alliance. The big idea right now, which was tabled in the visit to the UN, was the Coalition for Disaster resilient infrastructure, which was very widely welcomed by a lot of countries who are feeling the effects of climate change but don't have the resources to cope with it. So today they welcome a coalition of countries and they welcome leadership from some country which has got a feeling for countries of the South, which is willing to help with capacity building. So I think today we have to recognize whether it is in big ideas or I will give more practical considerations. We have, for example, in discussions raised issues about the welfare of our labor. Prime Minister has been to 3 countries in the Gulf. We have somewhere between 8.5 to 9 million people in the Gulf. These are really people who work under very difficult conditions, support the country, send back money to this country. Their welfare, their security, these are issues which have been discussed at some length and sometimes with great practicality and detail as well. We have discussed issues, again, when we are talking of outcomes, issues pertaining to security. This could be security in practical terms, in terms of technology, in terms of access to defense equipment, but these are also issues of political support on our matters of national vital interest. This is a period, for example, where Pakistan has sought to raise what was the internal issue of Article 370 abroad. And in many of these visits, the support and understanding that we saw from conversations that the Prime Minister, the President and the Vice President had were all very relevant. So I think there are a range of outcomes out here. Some of them can be put in numbers. Some of them are, as I said, in concepts and ideas. But let me assure the House that together, this is what foreign policy is about. It is about getting our interests advanced. It is about getting our point of view understood. And it is about getting our people looked after. So let me, sir, turn to the questions which Mr. Jairam Ramesh asked. With regard to the nuclear issues where the negotiations with the French are concerned, it is progressing. There are issues regarding the techno-commercial offer. There are issues regarding the reference plant which the French have to have operating for some time. Honourable member is fully aware that nuclear plants and nuclear contracts take years, in fact many, many years to negotiate and fructify. And in a different way, there are also ongoing negotiations with the Russians on Kudankulam. And I can assure the honourable members that whatever we do, whether it is in Kudankulam or whether it is in Jaitapur as a future site, today you heard from my ministerial colleague, Dr. Jitendra Singh, that the government is fully committed to ensuring the safety and security of our nuclear power plant. So I think members should rest assured.
Please. Rangrajan sir, you are a very senior member. First listen, then.
I can, sir, assure the honourable member, I have a background in nuclear negotiations, not in nuclear technology. But I would go by the technologist's advice. If our Atomic Energy Commission, which is represented by the most eminent scientists and nuclear technologists of our era, takes that decision, I would respect that decision. And I would urge the honourable member to also do so. There were a number of members raised Rcep. So let me say this very, very frankly. You have negotiations. These are not negotiations which were started under this government. It is negotiations which has carried on for many years. What happens in a negotiation? You negotiate till a point comes where you have to take a decision. Now, when we reached Bangkok, we had issues and concerns. These were being negotiated. They were negotiated even when we were in Bangkok. Now, at that point, the government took a view. We had to assess were our interests adequately met in the document, in the set of outcomes that had been agreed on for the Rcep. And we came to the conclusion that our concerns and interests were not sufficiently addressed. And I believe it is a matter of, to me, it is a matter of pride, it is a matter of, it is a positive thing that the Prime Minister actually looked at it and said that this is not in the best interest of the nation that I go forward at this time on this basis. So I think, frankly, the House should be welcoming this as someone who stands for the interests of the country, who is willing to take the tough decisions. who will not let the pressure of international diplomacy hustle him into taking a decision which is not good for the country. So I think, again, members should be reassured. This government and this Prime Minister will do what is right for the country on trade matters as on all other matters. So on Rcep, what will happen in the future is speculative. It depends on whether our concerns are addressed or not. So if our concerns are addressed, then obviously somebody will take whatever call needs to be taken. If they are not, then obviously the current call will continue. Dr. Patra raised the issue of COP25. I would, in all honesty, defer to my colleague, Mr. Javadekar, on this matter. I don't have the expertise to answer your question in detail. But again, I would like to assure the honourable member on climate change, especially in Paris and after Paris, we have played a very positive and constructive role. Today, we are seen as one of the leaders of climate change. And we are, a lot of the countries of the South today look up to us to protect their interests and, ensure that their voice is heard. And as I said, these initiatives like the International Solar Alliance have been very helpful in giving a practical shape to our climate change policy. Mr. Sinha, Shri Rakesh Sinha raised the issue of our relationship with Buddhist countries. This has been progressing. It has progressed in terms of engagements and events which we have done with many Buddhist countries. We support a regular Buddhist cultural gathering, but we have also in Southeast Asia supported the restoration of Buddhist heritage. We have in Mongolia supported Buddhist monasteries. And in a number of other countries, we have been involved in exchanges of Buddhist heritage. So the fact that India is the land of Buddha, the fact that this is today a very special, it gives us a very special standing with a lot of countries where the Buddhist faith is very strong, is something which we recognize, we value, and we will nurture. With regard to the non-aligned movement, again, I can assure you the Honorable Vice President led our delegation. We took full part in that negotiation. We shaped a lot of the important outcomes. We are regarded as a founder member of the NAM, and I think today there is still a very strong NAM constituency, and I believe it's an important aspect of our foreign policy that we nurture and maintain that support and constituency. Dr. Singh made a reference to Houston. So what I would like to say is we saw in Houston we heard from Houston 2 or 3 important messages. One, that today the Indian community, persons of Indian origin, stand united in support of India. They came to Houston to express their support for India, for the changes in India, for the message of India, and I think that is something that should be welcomed. As regards his concern, whether how this would be perceived in the United States, again, I can assure him, we have handled the United States in a bipartisan manner. We have good relations across the board. Before President Trump spoke in Houston, the House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer also spoke. He is the second-ranking Democrat in the House. There were Democratic members present in the House as well. And in fact, a few days later, I was in the Library of Congress, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, came and spoke again on the 150th anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. So I would like to assure you that our relationship goes across party divides in the United States. It is today a very durable relationship. It is a relationship that has got very firm foundations, so he can be assured that there will be no issues in that regard. Again, Mr. Rangarajan raised the issue of the Rcep negotiations, which I answered about the safety of Kudankulam, which also I assured him.
Please, Rajan Sahab, you are such a senior.
I would urge the honourable member. I would urge the honourable member to actually look at our investment figures. He will see that our investment figures have actually steadily gone up in the last few years. So if he wishes to quantify visits in terms of trade outputs, and I don't completely agree with that approach, but if he wishes to see year-on-year visits and trade, I can assure him he will find all the trade figures going up. He will have, there will be no confusion on that part.
Yesterday explained it in detail.
My colleague Swapan Dasgupta raised the issue, sir, of how do you relate economic approaches to foreign policy? I would like to assure the honourable member that it is not that there is an in-principle opposition to doing FTAs or an in-principle acceptance to doing FTAs. Every FTA must be judged on the basis of what it offers India. Does India gain? Does India lose? If India loses, we should not be hustled into it. If India gains, naturally it is in our interest to do it. What has happened in the we signed a lot of FTAs. We are today studying what has been the impact of those FTAs on our economy. And it's a very mixed picture. So we have urged the partner countries of those FTAs to do the review. And I think an honourable member actually asked me, will you do a review of the ASEAN FTA? Yes, we are doing a review of the ASEAN FTA. We have also urged Japan to do a review of our bilateral FTA. So if an FTA offers us gains, we are open-minded about it. For example, there's a bilateral BTIA, the bilateral FTA with EU. We are open to resuming the negotiations, but we don't have a doctrinaire approach. But there is, I can assure you again, through the chair, that honourable member should note that there is today great deal of synchronization between our economic policy, our financial policy, our foreign policy. This is a very, very cohesive government. All of us work together as one team. So there are no mixed messages or discontinuity among us. As regards the issue of the S-400, which was raised by the honourable member, we have, sir, made it very clear to everybody that India takes its decisions on its merits. We will not be influenced by other countries on what we do in terms of our national security and defence. If we have committed to the S-400 agreement, which we have, then it is other countries need to respect that decision. It has been made clear to all other countries. Then Shri Ravindrakant Verma sir raised the issue of anti-terrorism. He appreciated the support that we have got from the rest of the world on this issue. And I think that is something the House should recognize, that we have had actually an effort to bring up this issue in the close consultations of the UN Security Council. An effort was made to have a special debate and a resolution at the UN Human Rights Council. These were all blocked. They were defeated. Today, a lot of governments understand our positions. They hear our concerns. And I think that is something which the visits of our leaders have actually helped to make possible. But the practical points he made, how do we become a human resources leader when it comes to Southeast Asia? Where Southeast Asia is concerned, we have an FTA with all 10 ASEAN countries. We have 3 bilateral FTAs out there. We have FTAs with Japan and Korea. So it was not that Rcep is going to make a big difference where Southeast Asia is concerned. With regard to Nepal, I would respectfully differ. I think our problems with whatever misunderstandings there were with Nepal are behind us. I have myself gone to Nepal. We have had in fact, there have been conversations between our Prime Minister and the Prime Minister of Nepal. They have jointly inaugurated a pipeline, a fuel pipeline between the two countries. I can assure him that a lot of our projects, a lot of our issues with Nepal are going very smoothly, and we frankly think that our bilateral cooperation would go up. With regard to Pakistan, I completely accept that it's a unique neighbor. It is very different from all our other neighbors. But when it comes to neighborhood first policy, our objective is today that all our neighbors work with us. In different ways, we have connectivity with them, we improve cooperation with them, we have more contacts with them. if you look at trade, if you look at projects, if you look at visas of people travel, every number with every neighbor bar Pakistan is actually better than what it was before. So for us, neighborhood first is a statement of priority. It is a statement of the importance we put to them, and we have made it very clear to them that we will be generous and large-hearted. I think that has been the Prime Minister's message from his first visit to Nepal in 2014. It is a message he's carried to every one of the neighboring countries, and I think today they have great faith in his leadership to deliver on that approach. The issues of FTAs, EU and ASEAN, which was raised by Shri Patnaik, I have replied to. As regard the issue which Honourable Member asked about the dam in Bhutan, it is not my understanding that the dam in Bhutan is in any way contributing to whatever problems there may be in Assam. I can assure you that when we look at the dams in Bhutan, these are projects. All these projects are actually projects which have been undertaken bilaterally by India and Bhutan. Many of them are done by our agencies. The technical assessments are done by us. So I am sure that our own agencies will keep our national interests very much in mind. Finally, sir, when with regard to the two observations made by the Honourable Member, Srimati Vijila, one, when will we be UN Permanent Security Council Permanent Member? Well, I would hope soon, but I am realistic enough to know that it is a long and patient effort. But we are not lacking in patience, we are not lacking in our perseverance, and we are not lacking in our aspiration. We will get there one day, I am very confident, and it is progressing step by step. And finally, her second observation, sir, let me conclude my reply. She was very happy that the Xi Jinping Prime Minister meeting took place in Chennai. So was I.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Minister. Now we move to a special mentions.